Okay, so today we're going to be building the Fallout Radio, Radiation King to be exact. I'm going to be pulling a couple of pieces from this pile and we'll figure it out from there. Now remember, in this video, I'm going to show that you can do this with the limited amount of tools and a limited amount of knowledge to be able to do any of this. You don't need a whole lot of experience and you don't need a whole lot of tools to do any of this. This is just simple backyard or scrapyard, simple small amount of tools, simple knowledge, work. Anybody can do this. Okay, so now that I have my pieces of wood, I need to find a certain amount that is just the right length all the way. I don't need them to match the same size and same width. I don't need them to match the same size and same height, as long as they're the same width from back to front. I will put the measurements up on the screen that I am using, and after cutting the pieces I will show a couple of tips on how to get them even and get them sanded just right. Now again, these are simple tools, simple things that you can find around. You don't need a power saw, you don't need any kind of tools like that to do this. This is very, very simple, easy, basic stuff. As long as you know what you're doing and you have the simplest knowledge on woodworking, which I will help you and guide you in this, you should do just fine. Now this is not an actual guide on how to do this. This is just to show that you don't need a whole lot of experience, a whole lot of tools to do these kind of things. As long as you enjoy it and you put your heart into it and you put the thought in your mind and get it done. That's pretty much all you need. Okay, it's always good to measure out how far you want to do this. Apparently, I have forgotten how to use a tape measure. Lock it in place, come on. Okay, so after locking it in place, find where you want to put the starting point. Put just one little dot, and then do the same thing at the top, and work your way back down to the bottom one that you had just started. Okay, after doing that, line up the dots that you just made. You can use a piece of wood, anything as long as it's straight enough. Place a line going all the way up from the bottom. Do the same thing on the other side. Make sure that you measure exact same length and height that you did for the first boards. You don't want to do too heavy of a line because then the Sharpie will eventually stain the board to where you have to sand pretty deep to get it out. What I recommend is just a simple, small, slow little stroke across. Not too heavy, not too hard, just straight across enough to make a line that you can see. Now I recommend to go back and find the line that you're going to be using. Make sure that you always do a little bit over when you're cutting on a line, because when you cut on that line it takes a little bit off. So it's always best to do at least a small little mark over that line that you started. Okay, now that I've got my boards gathered up, this is the saw that I was going to originally use, but started to notice that it was probably not the best bet. Considering the fact of how flimsy the blade was, and that it just wasn't cutting the way I wanted to, it started cutting at an angle, and that's not going to do the best. So at this point I finally gave up and went over to a neighbor and asked if I could borrow their saw. Thankfully they actually had one. Not only that, he even gave me a second blade just in case the one that I was using wore out. Now you don't need to cut this all the way through. All you need to do is get it to a point where there's a little bit holding it together, and then just pop it down the middle and it'll snap in half. The only reason I'm cutting this one all the way down as much as I possibly can is because I got it uneven with that other saw. And the wind decided to take control over the camera. Okay, so now that we have the boards all lined up the way that we need them, now those little bitty bits that were at the end of the boards because we were snapping them instead of cutting all the way through, here's a simple little trick. All you gotta do is take the saw blade and just kind of grind it against that little spot at the end of the board. It's best to make sure that you get all the boards lined up just right and then clamp them together. It makes it a lot easier to go ahead and do this all at once. Okay, so now you're going to go ahead and release this. And you're going to turn the boards over the other direction. Do the exact same thing. Try to get them as even as you possibly can. It makes me really nervous to sit right here because we have had a tendencies of seeing snakes and scorpions. And it also doesn't help that this is currently the moment when mosquitoes are currently coming out. So at this moment I am paranoid of what's on the ground, and I have mosquitoes that will not leave me alone. It is very aggravating. I apologize for any odd and weird things I may do during this part. Okay, now that we have that all finished, we can take and move the boards over to another location. Today we're going to be using Gorilla Glue. It's Gorilla Wood Glue. Sorry for my camera going off focus. I forgot to turn autofocus off. I was able to buy these wood clamps for like 10 bucks, and the wood glue I think is like $8. And the sand pads you can get at like a dollar store for $1. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put the boards on their ends and have them facing up. Sand them down, get a nice smooth layer evenly on all of them to where they're semi-matching. Shake all the dust off of them and then turn them over on the other side and sand them the same direction. I've already done so on this part. I did it off camera, so it should be just fine on both sides. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay them out and try to see if I'm going to line them up and see if all 8 of them come out to the right numbers. Now when doing this, sometimes your boards may not always be the same size, so play around with them, and whenever you get an equal number on both sides, then you can start gluing them together. Do not glue them together unless they are even. As you can see right here, I'm measuring them, and at this point I realize that they're uneven on the size. So what this means is that I took 2 boards that came from the same board and a couple of other ones that came from 2 different ones and placed them unevenly. So what I need to do is I need to take one of those boards that looks similar to the other one, which means that it came from that same board, those two right there that I just swapped off. And I'm going to take the one underneath, place it over here, and place that one over here. Because the one in the middle down at the bottom on the right hand side came off the same board as the one at the bottom on the left hand side. And there we go, we have an even number now. Apply a little bit of glue, not a whole lot. You don't want to have an overrun of glue. Make sure that whenever you do this, rub both of the boards together after placing the glue in. This way it coats both parts of the board, and if there's any blank areas that didn't gather any glue, those are deeper spots. They're going to be your weak spots. Always make sure that you check the board, unlike I just did on the first one, and look for weak spots. After doing so, you're going to want to go back into those weak spots and fill in just a little bit, not a whole lot of glue. Fill it in and put it back together and see if you still have any weak spots. Okay, now after you get them all put together, you're going to want to scoop all the uneven glue off of the sides with something, preferably not your fingers. It's best to smooth all the extra glue that you don't want to scrape off into the cracks or any spots that are open. Those are also considered your weak spots. Make sure that you get all the glue off of the sides of the wood before laying it on your concrete. You do not want to end up with a gluey mess all over your concrete porch. Now clamp both sides, make sure that they're even and flush when doing this. It makes it a lot easier whenever you're sanding. Make sure that every bit of this process is completely even because there is no turning back after this. Okay, after doing all this and assuming that you've got it even, now you can place it in a spot and let it dry for a few hours. Whenever you notice that the wood glue has dried, then you can do the next step, assuming you only have 2 wood clamps like I do. And that'll be it for this video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.